All right, we're here. We're in.
We're ready to rock, as they say.
As they do say, in fact. We are ready to rock, and if you're up for it, we can roll, indeed.
We can.
can.
And I think you know how special this particular episode is.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Since we aren't in our usual location of the PSU library study rooms.
We are not. I don't even know where we are. I don't even know the name of this building, but I know it's the newest one on campus.
Correct. So
Yeah.
it is officially the Carl Miller Center.
God bless you. You are so alert. You know that.
Yeah. Well,
Amazing.
I've had a class here once, and that's the only reason. Oh, actually, the only reason I really know what this place is
Tell
when
me.
this place first got built. I was in here just kind of hanging out,
Yeah.
and someone had a seizure in here,
No.
and
way.
I had to call 911 to get someone to come out. And I told the 911 operator at least a dozen times the Carl Miller Center on the PSU campus, and they had no idea what I was talking
There's
about.
no such building, sir.
No, it's brand new. Like, I know it's here. I'm here. I'm in it.
You know, I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think there's a brewery on the sidewalk level.
That's true. There's a Growler pub.
Yeah.
USA
isn't that
Growler.
strange? Because this is an academic building. Not that I have an opinion one way or the other about the efficacy about that, but
Where booze is on a college campus.
yeah. I guess I have no opinion.
I mean, I feel as a college student, booze should be readily available for any and all.
Right.
I mean, if you wanna go downstairs, grab a beer to go, and then bring it up to class.
Steady your nerves
Yeah.
just before a test. But none of this discussion has anything to do with what I meant about how special this broadcast is. Or it's not a broadcast, but this episode. Because
It's our 10th episode.
Yeah.
It's the big 1-0. We've hit double digits.
exactly, I don't think we necessarily believed that would happen.
I remember distinctly as we kind of started going through these episodes, we're like, if we hit 10.
If we should hit 10, I
If
mean, it
by
was like
the-
really a magic number.
Yeah, we had no prediction that this would ever occur. In fact, the fact that we're at 10 is a miracle betwixt us both. It's truly something that we all should take a moment of silence
A moment
to
of silence and
to
stand
appreciate.
in
Yeah.
awe of our, at least of our diligence for sticking with it for so long. You've had several of your friends listen to these episodes,
Mm-hmm.
but I've only had one person, my friend Judy, listen to episode 5.
Which one was episode 5? What was the topic
Well,
on that
we
one?
talked about my aunt, or
Oh.
my great aunt.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I listened to a 40-year-old audio tape of her.
I remember talking about that, yeah.
Yeah, and I was kind of in awe of all of that. But the takeaway that Judy had was, well, she may have had more than one, but the one that I remember, the one that seems to be relevant today, is she made a comment about you.
Oh, about me.
Yeah.
People were talking about me.
Right, and what she said was, she thought you were the kind of person that was raised with respect. Now, I asked her,
Okay, yeah.
what do you mean by that? I
Because
respect
that's
for who?
pretty vague.
It is.
Yeah.
And her answer was general too. And I think it kind of leads to something, because she said he was raised with an understanding of the value of respect. Respect for who? Maybe everybody. I'm
Just
not
general?
sure. Just generally feeling a sense that everyone should be addressed with, I guess, some sort of respect. I mean, I don't know if I can delve a lot deeper than that. I guess it means you listen to people. Maybe.
I don't see, there's a lot of respect can be taken so many different ways, and it's a very subjective characteristic of someone, because you can respect a lot of things, but that won't mean much. It's really about what you're doing to do that? I don't.
The only way
That's
I can
very
unpack
difficult,
it,
yeah.
the only way I can unpack it at all is to say something that I've learned because I've listened to every single one of these broadcasts. And I know this about you. I think it's true for me too.
Mm-hmm.
But you listen to people.
Right. I
when
mean, it's a
they talk.
conversation.
True, but a lot of times people are falling all over themselves because they're thinking of their next clever rejoinder, and they're not really listening. You've had that experience, right? Where you have the sense that people aren't necessarily listening to you, they're waiting for you to stop talking.
So they
can
can-
start.
They've already decided what they want to say to
Exactly.
me before I've finished saying.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't hear you do that.
I mean, I try not to. I mean, shout out to my parents for not making me a conversational asshole.
Well, that's what Judy's talking about. She
Yeah.
thought you were raised in conditions of respect. And yeah, it is. It's a general term. But if there is one takeaway, and it's a simple one, but you listen.
You know what? For any of the ladies out there, I am single. So if you want someone to listen
You need
to
somebody who's got a good ear. I mean, and he'll be sympathetic. I guess you would be. I don't really know that.
I try to be. So if I can't adhere to empathy, I will try to adhere to sympathy to the best of my own ability.
Okay,
And I
unpack
would-
that. How are you making that distinction? Sympathy is, I know you're hurting, and so I feel bad for you. And empathy
Yeah.
is, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Exactly that. So
Okay.
empathy is the idea that you have been through that situation before, so you know how they feel. Sympathy is that you haven't been through that situation, so you kind of give yourself your emotions to allow them to vent or grieve or in whatever way because you can't understand that feeling on that level because you
Right.
haven't experienced it.
So you've actually thought this out and have a plan to move forward if you meet either of those conditions, either one you understand or one you don't understand.
I feel like I've had a very wide range of experiences that allows me to lend myself more to empathy.
Yeah?
But I mean, if obviously in my young life I haven't experienced everything. So,
No.
you know, just trying to be nice to people as much as you can, that respect, sympathize with them. Because you don't have to fix them, but you just need to be there for someone, you know? It's not about can you come up with a solution to my current issue right now, because there isn't a solution to emotion. There's just dealing with it.
Well, I guess, and I'm not sure that I necessarily am as generous perhaps as you are in these kinds of cases. I think that I am willing to listen to people, but maybe because of the age difference, people that I encounter often are not in the position of needing necessarily to share their deepest emotions with someone, that they don't know that well.
Right.
You know, I mean, I have great conversations with people that I've known for a really long time, but anything about empathy or in some way sympathizing with them is decades past. I mean, I just
Okay.
get them, and I like them, and I am there for them, and it's automatic. It isn't that I have to think about it or say, you know, I got to really pay attention here. I
Yeah.
got to be empathetic.
Do you believe that's because in your lifetime, I mean, not to call you old, but in your
Oh, go ahead.
52 extra years of your
Yeah,
life,
that's
in
one
case
thing
of
that
mine,
I think it's kind of important to clarify.
for any new listeners here.
Right, and I know we haven't really done this on every broadcast, but Aiden, as I understand it, is 20. You might be 21 by now.
Nope.
No, you're 20.
20.
And I'm 72, so that's kind of amazing.
There's a huge age gap
Oh,
here.
man,
and
that's
so
crazy decades.
You were 52 years old, almost near retirement when I was born.
You must have been so cute, little kid. Oh my God. Yeah, I know. I mean, that is weird. It is weird, and now you are someone that I completely get. You know, cognitively, we're not that different, and I don't. Well, are we off track? What were we talking about?
Do you think because of all your experience in your life that you've been able to live through so much? There have been so many things that you have lived through, experienced, done, everything on such a wide variety of things. Do you think that lends itself to help you empathize with people, and that's why you can get people so quickly, is because you've almost experienced most, if not all?
Oh, dude, I don't think I've experienced
All? No, that's a stretch.
Almost. No, man, because, I mean, I'm just in this one body, you know, and everything is finite. I mean, I have a perception system that allows me to sense inches away from my body, maybe feet, and sometimes if I'm at a high altitude location, maybe a mile or more, but I have no way of comprehending much about what's around me. I mean, even people. No, I think I have to struggle to this day to empathize with people. I mean, one thing that happens, I think, as you get older is you develop biases. I don't think one necessarily broadens out. Now, I think I've maintained a broad and a liberal worldview more than a lot of people.
Or at least your age.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
I'm talking about people who are older. I think a lot of them narrow down because their lives are filled with disappointment and resentment.
Okay.
And what can happen is you look for reasons for your own failures. I'm talking about me.
Okay.
You know, I might look for the reasons for my own failures, and I realize it wasn't my fault at all. Someone else did it to me.
Okay. What do you elaborate on that?
Well, I'm just saying that, let's say hypothetically, I didn't get a job I wanted or something. I didn't get a promotion. Now, this isn't really autobiographical. This is just an example. But I mean, in some sense, these things have happened to me where I look for a reason that things did not turn out the way I wanted them to.
Right.
And I don't blame myself.
Okay.
I find someone else to blame. And if you do that enough, and if you do it without being sufficiently self-aware to know you're doing that, then it becomes your worldview. And I think it's very easy for older people, you know, to hate whoever, because they say that that person or that kind of person ruined my life, maybe.
So, my understanding of what you're saying here is that depending on the path of life that you eventually go onto,
and how you interpret that path too. Yeah.
So that pinnacle turning point, where it's like I either did or did not get this thing, you narrow it down to someone else doing it to you, instead of it being a personal choice?
Someone else is at fault.
Okay, so
let's say you're in a relationship, for example, and it breaks up.
Yeah.
And I have utter resentment for that person because they ruined my life because they were really important and now they're gone.
Right.
But it's only because they're really bastards, right?
Because fuck them.
Yeah, because not of anything I did. Well, man, if you do not unpack the relationship, any kind of relationship, if it's romantic or if it's professional, and at least open the door to the possibility that
it could be your fault,
that I am responsible.
Right.
If you don't do that, then you're going down the wrong pathway, in my opinion.
Because constantly blaming others, and instead of trying to create a better you instead think, I'm perfect, it's everyone else around me that is the issue.
And I mean, if you have a whole lifetime of that, then that's a real justification for hate.
Yeah.
And I think
It really festers in you.
Oh man, and I think that happens to a lot of old people. And it's a curse. I've strived, especially, I don't know, in the last at least 20 years.
Yeah.
And I see that kind of thing can happen. You try to change that. So you made the assumption that older people are broader than that. I mean, maybe you were generalizing, or maybe you were just talking about your impression of me. I'm not sure which. You were kind of saying, oh, as life goes on, you see so many different things, and they make you a wiser person. And what I'm saying is, maybe, but sometimes not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what I was trying to say, at least, was that in general, or you specifically,
Yeah.
that the more experiences you have, the more worldly you are, the more
that's
understanding.
The theory. It's an understandable proposition.
But it's the way that you're saying it, as someone with the actual experience of it all,
Yeah.
that the older you get, the more narrow you become.
Can easily be, yes.
Okay.
You have to fight that. I have to fight that.
Yeah, and the way you fight the narrowing is by, instead of blaming others for how your life is being shaped, instead, not necessarily blaming yourself, but identifying why this didn't happen because what you did, right?
Just understanding that sometimes my behavior contributed to a situation that turned out to not be ideal for me.
Right. Fascinating. I don't know. I mean, that gives me a lot to think about as someone who's as young as I am.
Yeah.
And so, because I know in my head there have been a lot of things that I've done where I resent people because of what they've done to me, without rationally thinking that, like, maybe it is my fault. Maybe I did do something that in my perspective was okay, but in someone else's not. But resenting them for that anyways?
Right. I mean, and I'm not going to go into specifics here, but I am going to say...
don't dig up different dirt.
Right, without my attorney present. But I know that sometimes when I'm lying in bed at night, I think back on my life and I'm kind of horrified at my behavior sometimes. And I think, where did that come from? What kind of worldview was I operating under that allowed me to be so insensitive in certain cases?
Okay.
It's a shame.
Do you think that's more of like an era thing, a location thing? Like, why do you feel that you had that worldview in that time?
Sometimes I think it has to do with perspective.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes I've valued myself a lot higher than I do now, meaning I think that I was more selfish than I am now, that I kind of understand that a broader, more open and giving attitude works not just to the benefit of others, but to my benefit as well. Whereas earlier in my life, when I was goal-oriented, all I could see sometimes was that goal and my desire to get there. And so I behaved selfishly.
Okay.
I would describe myself now as having behaved selfishly then.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do it now. I wouldn't behave that way.
When I was, I want to say like 16, 17, I got advice. That's the word I'm looking for. I got advice from people that I worked with who were 25, 26, up in the upper 20s.
Yeah.
And what they told me was that your young years, your years between 20 and 30, that decade is your decade.
Right.
And so what they told me was that it's okay to be selfish in this time frame because that's where so much of your life is going to happen, that you need to be focused on you before anyone else, so that way you don't set yourself up for failure in life, you know?
Wow, can you give me an example of what you mean by that? I mean, selfish in what way? You know, being goal-oriented isn't
Yeah.
a bad thing.
Right, no, I guess what they were trying to tell me is that my focus in my life, my main goal, my drive, should be my own personal well-being and success.
Okay.
Because if I spend so much time worrying or focusing on how can you be better, how can I help you, how are you in this situation, then I'm no longer focusing on me. They're going ahead of me in life, and then I'm stuck down here,
Right.
you know? And unless, you know, the people that you help out are going to be those network connections later in life, that's a possibility. But if you aren't focusing on you, your goals, then eventually you'll run out of time to do them.
You know, I almost think that advice is a little bit too narrow, because the word that comes to mind for me is collaboration,
Right.
where I think what I've learned, what I've found out over time is, you were talking about networking, but networking is a specific behavior where you schmooze people, shake their hand,
Oh,
and
yeah.
will want to really be friendly because you know that they're a good number you could call if you ever need some help, right?
Right.
It's somebody who can do you a favor. But collaboration is deeper than that.
Right.
Collaboration kind of has the same result though, because if you're giving in a certain way, not to take away from yourself, and I mean, again, we're in hypothetical territory, so
Right.
I could use my business, and I don't know if I've ever talked about this on a previous podcast or not, but working in television with photographers, I used to think that the photographer had to do what I said.
Right. You were top dog.
I'm top dog.
Yeah.
And as time went on, and we'd be in the edit room, and they'd have very definite opinions about how the story should go, but I'd written the script. It's totally up to me.
Yeah.
And they would give me input about how things should be changed or how it should go. And I was pretty arrogant, and I thought, oh, I don't have to listen to this. But as time went on, I realized that the more I didn't put up a barrier, and maybe we'd try it both ways and then finally come to some conclusion that really had to do with how it worked for other people, not just
Yeah.
for me and for this other person. Well, then you develop a certain kind of trust.
Okay.
And in doing so, it radiates beyond the edit room. It becomes friendship, it becomes connections that end up being supportive in ways throughout your whole life. Now, in a different profession, if you're in politics or something like that, if you try to collaborate, I'm thinking that the same result occurs where trust builds, empathy goes along for the ride,
Yeah.
and one begins to think of other people as friends, people you can rely on. It becomes a foundation for a life in a way that's broader than just being out for yourself for your first,
Yeah.
for your 20s and into your 30s.
Yeah.
Somehow.
I feel like the philosophy of collaboration that you're kind of talking about requires that you and whoever you quote unquote collaborate with have similar goals, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah, so that's still kind of looking after yourself, because
It is.
you
It
still
is.
are benefiting yourself
Yes.
in its entirety,
Absolutely.
but someone who has a very similar goal where you both can benefit from doing that, I feel like that's a little different. That's more of a teamwork thing than a selfishness thing.
Maybe I would say more, but I guess I see where you're going with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I guess the advice that I got was,
Yeah, give me an example. Could you of a case where selfishness would work better? Collaboration is not an option.
I don't think in any circumstance collaboration wouldn't be an option because
Yeah.
we're defining collaboration as something where both people benefit from it, and so there's no reason to collaborate unless you benefit. But it's kind of one of those things where you go off and do something for someone else that holds no benefit to you.
You mean a Mother Teresa type of thing?
I mean, volunteering you can kind of
Yes,
You-
you can
you can-
accrue a spiritual
Yeah.
benefit.
Yeah, there's benefit to that. But focusing so hard on others in this time where you need to be focusing on yourself, kind of,
Yeah.
I'm kind of losing myself in my own philosophy here. And the advice that I got 4 years ago, because I personally don't believe that I've been following that at all. The advice that I got from people far older than me at that time,
Yeah.
I haven't cared about it.
Well, I mean, see, it's, I mean, we're really getting to
Getting in the weeds here,
mushy
yeah.
territory because I have a limited life experience, just like I was saying. And
Limited, 72 years.
Well, I mean, but I was in the same career path for most of it. So when I
Okay.
think about collaboration,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be with a photographer. It can be with someone in management, or let's say that I had ended up being a disc jockey back in the day, you know, on the radio. I read newsletters today talking about the philosophy of managing a radio station. And what seems to always come up is don't be an asshole. Don't just be out for yourself. Understand that you can, if you're a disc jockey, you can work with the sales department. You can try to help them sell the product of the radio station instead of just saying, well, you guys are peons. I don't care about you because you're not in the entertainment industry. I am. And I just don't care about that. Well, that's not an uncommon mindset because
Right.
a person has an ego and they say, by God, I really am good on the radio and I don't have time.
To deal with
To
someone
worry.
who can't be on the
Who
radio.
can't do it, you're just
Yeah, yeah.
not interesting enough. That kind of thing.
What? Okay, let's take that philosophy. That,
Which one?
The one that you just said.
narrower,
Yeah.
egocentric.
Not the egocentric one, though. Don't be an asshole one.
Oh, yeah.
As it
Okay.
refers to disc jockeys
Sure.
or anything like that.
All right, sure.
Let's replace disc jockey with people. Right?
Yeah.
Let's generalize it.
All right,
I feel like
absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
a very effective philosophy that we all should adhere to, you
Well,
know?
yeah.
And
That's
so-
what I'm trying to say. Even
Right.
though I can't tell you because of my experience.
Yeah. Okay. Now I think I'm starting to piece it together little by little that just don't be an asshole.
Really, it was a beautiful moment. We had the insight. I don't know how it came, but
It only took us a half an hour to figure out
we
to not be an
realized
asshole.
that the meaning of life is to not be an asshole. But it's seemingly true. That's what I'm saying, really.
And it hurts to know that a lot of people don't adhere to
Oh,
that.
they don't.
And it's
No, you're right.
it's so easy just to not suck, you know? It's so simple. It's not complex. I feel like many times it's far more complex to be an asshole than it is to just be nice, to have respect, you know?
Well, I mean, but of course, in the moment, one's not extrapolating the ramifications of being an asshole. They're just being an asshole because they're pissed, for example. They got mad at someone. They cuss them out, maybe punch them in the face, whatever they do. And maybe they just, badmouth them at work. Right?
And it's also who the asshole is requires subjectivity, right?
To some extent, but
Because
again,
there's
we're-
definitely perspective on this.
Yeah, but I think you and I both know what we're talking about. I mean, generally, in the scheme of things, Most people would agree that they can identify an asshole, and I would guess that most of the time I'd agree with them, that
Right.
person is an asshole. Somebody who, the moment the light changes in traffic, you honk.
Already on it, yeah.
Yeah, see, I'm tempted, however, to do that sometimes because I'm frustrated. I don't like being in the traffic, and I want to somehow release the tension in my own body by hitting that horn.
By giving it to someone else.
Yeah,
kind
but
of
you
thing.
are giving it to somebody else when you do that. You are kind of contributing to the deterioration of the community.
You know, it's interesting. Now that I'm thinking about it, frustration and being an asshole is almost like a disease. Like a communicable disease,
yeah, and I think
right?
it can go deeper and deeper into a person as
Oh,
time
yeah.
goes on. Yeah.
So the way that I'm seeing it right now, or maybe it's like a finite feeling in life, you know? So
Meaning.
if you're an asshole, right?
All right.
For whatever reason,
Yeah.
and you do an asshole thing to someone else,
Sure.
right? You are releasing your tension and then pushing that tension or whatever else to that person that you've
Yes,
been an asshole too,
because
right?
I don't want to feel tense, so I give it to you by yelling. It's like,
Yeah.
kicking the dog when you come home from work, right?
Right.
It's that. It's that.
And so now I feel less, but now you have that tension now.
Right.
I've given you my feelings, and that's the end of it.
Yes.
You now have it. You're the asshole now.
Well, I mean, unless that person is really mindful and recognizes how that exchange took place,
Right.
and processes it differently, because that's the thing. You do have a choice, and one of the advantages of aging, actually, there are a number of them that apply here. One is you do learn techniques, or can learn techniques to tolerate stress
Okay.
without pushing it out on someone else, right?
Okay, yeah.
And the other thing is you can see what happens to people who never learned that little trick, who simply projected their own anxiety, their own unhappiness, their own tension onto everyone around them. Well, they start being targets, or they get cut out of the system because nobody wants to deal with them, because all they're bringing to the table
Is negativity.
is crap.
Right.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that in and of itself say you phase them out, or they're constantly getting crap because they're given crap? Doesn't that just create this endless cycle of being an asshole?
Well, for them,
Right. So
yeah. But I mean, that's what I think you are going to end up avoiding in life. But
Yeah.
what's your point in there? I mean, isn't that obvious that some people who are assholes end up being
Assholes
very
for life?
unhappy? Yeah, unhappy. That doesn't surprise you, does it?
no, but
Okay.
I think if we're able to identify it, if we're able to see this person is a total dick, right?
Right.
And if we have to deal with them on a daily basis for whatever reason, what is causing it? Is it because they're an asshole and now they've been phased out, so all they get is this constant cycle of being an asshole, and that's all they got? So
Yeah,
if
I mean,
we
that's
can, as someone like yourself who has gathered years of data, if you will, years
Sure,
of
sure.
research on
No, yeah.
the human condition,
Yeah.
then you can empathize with that, because in your life you've obviously been an asshole, you've dealt with assholes,
Right.
and so you can empathize with this now and then bring them back into the unbroken circle of trust and wholesomeness.
Wow. See, now that's where, forgive me for this, I apologize, but that's showing your youth, in my
Yeah,
jaded
yeah.
opinion. I'm sorry. Because I think
I'm young and innocent.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that there's a point of no return necessarily.
Yeah.
I think maybe, you remember the story of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol where
Yeah.
Ebenezer Scrooge is visited by the ghosts of
Right.
Christmas past and stuff, and he changes into this generous, giving man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's presented as a miracle of Christmas. And
Yeah.
it's a beautiful story,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
But in real life, I think that doesn't happen very often.
I don't know how
Because no
often-
ghosts show up to help you.
Yeah, all the ghosts we've encountered haven't been super helpful in our lives.
No. I mean, it's, and plus, I mean, part of it has to do with psychology.
Right.
What happens if a person is traumatized as a child and never really gets any help? All that happened to them is they imprinted certain behavior patterns that they learned from their abusive parents. So they go out into the world, and what do? They reference their past, and they behave in the same way that their parents did. So they abuse their children in some way. Slap them around, say, or yell at them all the time, and never give them any support at all. Well, then it's a self-reifying kind of circumstance that can go on from generation to generation to generation. There's nothing that I can see necessarily that would break that cycle, really, because there rarely are ghosts on Christmas Eve
Yeah.
saving you from
Do you
that.
think this is like a too far gone scenario where
Can be, yeah.
I remember us having a conversation about your family.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to not talk about this, by all means.
No, I'll talk about it.
So I know what you've told me, that your parents were similar to this. And
Yeah, they
your-
were
your-
alcoholic, yeah.
And your brother is the one that really adhered to that path.
Seemingly, yes.
Yeah. And you, luckily enough, were able to deviate from that and be who you are today.
Yeah, from tons of psychotherapy. I don't know why. I had the insight. I really could see what was happening to me. And I don't know why I knew that.
Right.
But looking back, I think, whoa, that was just in time, man.
So the differences between you and your brother, what do you think was the pivotal point that led so you kind of self-realize that this isn't good and I need help, and your brother thinking this is what life is and I'm going to continue that?
Yeah.
Where do you think, and I know you can't really speak for your brother, but kind of inferring in some way in your life, where was that decision made?
I got to applaud the question, but I don't think I can answer. I think it's a really good question. And I've had this discussion with people.
Right.
And I have to be honest, I have given them an answer, but it's so personal that I just don't think I can elaborate on it when there are people
Listening.
Who could be hurt by that.
That's fair.
Yeah, but
There's a certain culture of respect in that,
we'll say more because you're our expert on respect, man.
clearly. So kind of what I had said, you can't speak for your brother, so you aren't
Yeah.
answering the question, despite, thank you for thinking that it's a good question.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid of the people that can't speak for themselves can't or will be offended in some way, or that someone could be hurt by
could be
your
hurt,
answer.
yes. Yeah.
And so what you're doing is that you're empathizing once again, because I feel like in your years you've experienced something where someone has spoken on your behalf or said something that ultimately came back to you and hurt you in some way or another. And so now what you have done is that you have created this bubble, this data point of, I'm not going to speak on anybody's behalf for anybody for any reason,
Right.
because I know from these past experiences that clearly nothing good ever comes out of it.
Right. It comes down to honoring, I think, my own frailty or my potential lack of insight in very heavy kinds of situations like this one, or I literally kind of have to say, well, I have opinions, but I don't know.
Yeah. There's an answer, but I don't know it. Kind of thing.
Kind of. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, that's so I guess really to sum it all up, in the end, don't be an asshole overall.
That's a good plan.
Yeah.
That's a good strategy. Avoid assholeism as much as you can.
Do you think it takes 72 years to learn that?
Well, I mean, it did for me.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's possible probably, unless something like dementia comes in and one starts to lose cognition.
Right.
I think and that's one of the joys of staying alive, I think, is that you increasingly understand yourself and, by extension, the world, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you empathize more with the world as you
empathize more with the world and with myself, kind of.
Okay.
Start saying, oh, that's why you react like that.
Okay.
That's why those certain things make you mad.
Okay, elaborate on that.
Okay. I have had a memory since I was a really little kid of playing in the sand at the beach.
Okay.
And in this image, there's what looks like a very tall building, probably a hotel of some sort. And I'm digging in the sand with a shovel and a pail, and my mom is sitting there reading a book.
Right.
But the overall feeling, and this would come back to me all the time, and I'd wonder, why am I seeing this image? I feel stressed in this image, and I realize the really significant thing about the image is, even though my mom's there, I'm all alone. And the irony is, I know I'm at the beach because of the sand and the pail,
right.
but I never see the ocean. And I think that it is an unbelievably graphic image of isolation.
Wow.
And
you just don't see the horizon.
I'm not given any experience. I'm told to be on my own and be happy because I say stuff to my mom.
Yeah.
She looks up from the book. She says words I really can't hear.
Yeah.
And I think she's just saying, in effect, go back to playing. I'm busy and I do not want to deal with you. Well, the sense of emptiness that comes from that is extraordinarily powerful, and it's only in recent months, actually, that dream has brought to mind, and it's not a dream, it's really a memory, the significance of what it means to me. I mean, just that horror of isolation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of, what's the term I'm thinking of? It's, I'm there but not present kind of thing.
Well, I mean, I'm not an emotionally whole individual
right.
if I'm not, if I'm being told to play a role like the good little boy, right? But not have the joy
of being
the experience of being at the beach, running around, looking at seagulls, I mean, finding rocks or shells on the coastline, none of that. See? But I had to pretend it was great.
Right.
So those kinds of things psychologically might answer your other question of why someone's an asshole. Because that emptiness that they feel might somehow permeate their behavior for decades and decades, and they never have the insight. They may have that memory, like I had, about digging in the sand,
right.
but they never have the blessing of the insight to interpret that dream in a way that tells, in my case, me, that I was isolated and unloved.
I feel like coming out of this and the path where you and your brother split, right? At least in attitude, is the ability to self-realize.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your brother had all these issues and all these pent-up emotions, but never did anything with them. He just let them run his life. While you, on the other hand, at some point looked back on these and realized that there's emotion in these memories. There's things that need to be changed. There's issues. There's problems.
Yeah, there were. I did have that insight. You're absolutely right about that part, for sure.
And then that's where you deviate from him.
That might be the case, yes.
Ugh.
Could be.
All right.
You know, I don't think we said the name of the podcast at the beginning, did we?
So let's do it at the end.
Right.
This has been episode 10.
Of Inherently Human.
I'm Aiden DeBoard.
My name's Jim Newman.
And we hope to see you next time. This was a good 10th episode. Thank you for sticking it out with us all this time.
Yeah, thanks a lot.